In this video, we'll be going over how to add polynomials. In our last video, we learned that polynomials were algebraic expressions that consists of sums of powers of your variable. An example of a polynomial would be something like 2x cubed plus 5x squared minus 3x plus 7. In the word polynomial, we have the prefix here, poly. Poly means many, and it's referring to the many things that we're adding up in our algebraic expression. Here we have the terms 2x cubed, 5x squared, negative 3x, and 7 all added up together. These individual terms here are sometimes referred to as monomials. The prefix mono here stands for 1, as each of these terms are one of the terms in the polynomial. Now, if we want to add polynomials together, we'll need to combine like terms. Like terms are monomials that have the same variable raised to the same powers. Let's look at some examples where we determine whether groups of monomials are like terms or not. In our first example, let's say we have 3x and 1/2 x. Now, these monomials, 3x and 1/2 x, are indeed like terms. They have the same variable x, and in both of these terms, the x is raised to the first power. So we have the same variables raised to the same powers. For our next example, let's say we have 5x squared y cubed and negative 2x squared y cubed. Again, these monomials are like terms because they both have variables x and y, and in both of these terms, x is raised to the second power and y is raised to the third power. In our next example, let's consider the monomials 2x and x squared. These two monomials are not like terms. They both have the variable x, but in the first monomial, x is raised to the first power, and in our second monomial, x is raised to the second power. So since they have different powers, they are not like terms. Let's look at one last example. Let's say we have 4x cubed and negative 4y cubed. Again, these monomials are not like terms. Although the variables are both raised to the third power, in the first monomial we have the variable x, and in our second monomial we have the variable y. Since they have different variables, these are not like terms. Now that we have a sense of what like terms are, we're ready to add polynomials. If we want to add polynomials together, what we'll need to do is group the like terms together. And then we can combine them by adding their coefficients. Remember, coefficients are the numbers that are multiplied to the variables. For example, if you have something like 3x and you add 4x to it, well, you can think about this as having 3 apples and also 4 apples. Adding those things together, you'll have 7 apples. So 3x plus 4x would be 7x. Essentially, we're adding the coefficients together. Monomials that are not like terms cannot be combined. For example, if I have 3x plus 4y, well, I might think about that as having 3 apples and 4 oranges. Since they're not like terms, I can't think of them as the same fruit. And so there's no way for me to combine 3 apples and 4 oranges. So we would just leave that as 3x plus 4y. Now let's look at some examples. In our first example, we have the polynomial x cubed plus 2x squared minus 5x plus 7 added to the polynomial 4x cubed minus 5x squared plus 3. The first thing that we'll want to do is group any like terms together. In our first polynomial, let's start with this x cubed. I want to look at my second polynomial and see, do I have any like terms to x cubed? And it looks like we do. We have a 4x cubed here. So I'm going to write x cubed plus 4x cubed together. Next, I can look at the term 2x squared and see if there are any like terms in my second polynomial. And again, we have a minus 5x squared in my second polynomial. So those are like terms, and I'll write those together. So I have plus 2x squared and then minus 5x squared. The next term in my first polynomial is negative 5x. Do I have any like terms in my second polynomial? Well, there aren't any terms with x to the first power in my second polynomial. So there are no like terms to negative 5x. So that will just stay by itself, negative 5x. And then lastly, we have terms that don't have any variables with them. We have the plus 7 and the plus 3. I'll write those at the end. Plus 7 plus 3. So now we're ready to combine the like terms. First, we'll combine the x cubed and the 4x cubed. Again, I can think about this as having one apple and then adding 4 apples. So, adding those things together, we have 5 apples in the end, or 5x cubed. Next, let's combine the 2x squared and the minus 5x squared. I can think about this as having 2 oranges, and then I take away 5 oranges. At the end, I'll have negative 3 oranges, or negative 3x squared. The negative 5x here can't be combined with anything else, so we'll just write that down on its own. And then lastly, the 7 and the 3 here can be combined together to give me 10. Now, looking at the monomials that we have here, we have 5x cubed, minus 3x squared, minus 5x, and 10. None of these are like terms, so there's nothing more that we can combine. So that's the sum of my two polynomials. I have 5x cubed minus 3x squared minus 5x plus 10. Let's look at another example. Let's say we have the polynomial x to the fourth plus 2x cubed minus x minus 2, and add to that the polynomial 3x cubed plus 3. To add these two polynomials, we'll start by grouping the like terms together. The first monomial we have here is x to the fourth, but there are no x to the fourths in my second polynomial, so it's just on its own. Next, we have 2x cubed, and we do have a like term in my second polynomial. We have 3x cubed, so we'll write those together. Plus 2x cubed plus 3x cubed. Next, we have minus x, and again, in my second polynomial, I don't have any like terms because there's no x to the first power in that second polynomial. So I'll just write the minus x on its own. Lastly, we have terms that don't have any variables. We have a negative 2 here and a positive 3. Those two terms can be combined. So I have minus 2 plus 3. Now, combining the like terms, we have x to the fourth. Next, the 2x cubed and the 3x cubed can be combined together, and all we have to do is combine their coefficients. Add 2 and 3 together, we get 5, so we have 5x cubed. Then we have minus x, and then lastly, negative 2 plus 3 gives me positive 1. So that's our answer. In our next example, we have x cubed plus 3x squared minus 9x plus 8 minus the polynomial 12x squared minus 8x plus 15. So here we're subtracting two polynomials. But what we're going to do is rewrite this a little bit. Just like in arithmetic, if you have a negative sign in front of a parentheses, what you can do is bring the negative sign in to each of the terms. So I'm going to rewrite this as x cubed plus 3x squared minus 9x plus 8 minus 12x squared. When I bring the negative sign into the negative 8x, this becomes a positive 8x, and then minus 15. So now we'll group the like terms together. First, we have x cubed. There are no other x cubed terms in here, so I'll just write that on its own. Then we have 3x squared. Now that has a like term. I have a minus 12x squared here, so I'll group those two terms together. I have plus 3x squared minus 12x squared. Next, we have the like terms negative 9x and 8x, so we'll write those together, minus 9x plus 8x. Lastly, we have terms with no variables, the plus 8 and the minus 15. Now let's combine the like terms. So we have x cubed. the plus 3x squared and the minus 12x squared can be combined together. If I combine the coefficients, 3 minus 12, I get negative 9x squared. Next we have negative 9x plus 8x. Combining the coefficients, negative 9 plus 8, that gives me negative 1. So I have negative 1x, or just negative x. And then lastly, 8 minus 15 gives me negative 7. So this is what we get when we subtract those two polynomials. Let's do one last example. So here we have the combination of three polynomials. 2x cubed minus x squared plus 4x minus 3 plus the polynomial 5x squared minus 2x plus 1, and then we're subtracting 3x cubed minus 2x squared minus 7. Again, the first thing I'm going to do is bring the negative sign inside the parentheses to each of the terms. So I can rewrite my expression as 2x cubed minus x squared plus 4x minus 3 plus 5x squared minus 2x plus 1, and then minus 3x cubed. Bring the negative sign to the negative 2x squared gives me a positive 2x squared. And then bring the negative sign to the negative 7 gives me plus 7. Next, I want to group any like terms together. So I have a 2x cubed and a minus 3x cubed that can be written together. 2x cubed minus 3x cubed. Next, we have minus x squared, and we also have a plus 5x squared, and also plus 2x squared. All three of those are like terms because they have x to the second power. So I'll group those together. That's minus x squared plus 5x squared plus 2x squared. Then we have plus 4x, which can be combined with the minus 2x. So plus 4x minus 2x. And then lastly, the terms without any variables. We have a minus 3 plus 1 plus 7. So that's minus 3 plus 1 plus 7. Now let's combine things together. 2x cubed minus 3x cubed. Combining the coefficients, 2 minus 3, that gets me negative 1. So I have minus x cubed. Then for the x squared terms, I have minus x squared plus 5x squared plus 2x squared. Let's combine the coefficients. I have negative 1 plus 5 plus 2, which gives me 6. So that's 6x squared. Then for the x terms, we have 4x minus 2x. So that's 4 minus 2, which gives me positive 2x. And then lastly, negative 3 plus 1 plus 7 gives me 5. So that's our final answer. This is where we'll end this video. In our next video, we'll talk about multiplying polynomials.